there are so many people out there who freeze and don't know what to do. And then they get down on themselves, exactly like you were talking. Like, what do you say to those people? Start. Like, if anything, I want to shake them and just like start. And the greatest thing is that once you start, your next step is always going to be available to you. But you got to start for that to happen, for that magic and that miracle to happen.
Welcome to the Outlier Mindset Podcast, your guide for living a life by design. Here, we explore the journey of becoming an outlier, finding your purpose, mastering your mindset, optimizing your health, achieving financial freedom, and building a life centered around your passions. So tune in, transform, and thrive. Welcome to the Outlier Mindset. Let the journey begin. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Outlier Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Rodman Schley, and today we are lucky to have the always inspirational Nick Prefontaine. Nick is a celebrated 3-time best-selling author and was recognized as a top motivational speaker of 2022 by Yahoo Finance. As the founder and CEO of Common Goal, he leverages his proprietary step system to guide clients through their trauma, unlocking their limitless potential. Nick, welcome to the show.
Rodman, I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you here too. You've got a really interesting story about some of the trials and tribulations that you've had and an accident in particular that you had that I want to talk about today. I was wondering if maybe you would start off the conversation by telling people your backstory.
Sure. So, gosh, it's really a loaded question. As you know, the backstory of me and what happened to me in the accident and everything leads me back to a day in 8th grade when I was at ski club with my friends. And on the way to the mountain, my friends and I had all brought our snowboard gear onto the bus to get ready so we wouldn't miss a precious moment once we got to the mountain. On the ride up, we noticed that it was very icy because it had been raining. So people were wiping out everywhere. However, that didn't stop us. We were experienced skiers and snowboarders, and we knew what we were doing. The chairlifts actually went right over the terrain park where all of the jumps were. And I knew as soon as I saw it that I was going to hit the biggest jump in the terrain park. As soon as the chairlifts went over and I spotted it, I was like, oh yeah, that has my name all over it. So I got to the top, buckled into my snowboard, took a breath of that crisp winter air, and confidently charged towards that jump with all my speed. And then going up to the jump, I caught the edge of my snowboard, which threw me off balance.
Did you catch like a front edge? Is that what you caught?
I was going so fast, and I just caught the edge of my snowboard, and I couldn't stop because I was going so fast. So I was forced to go off the jump, and later I learned that I landed right on my head, and I wasn't wearing a helmet. There are several things about that day that I still, to this day, I still don't know. However, now I know, with the work that I'm doing with Common Goal, why I'm here today, why I'm able to share this story with you and your listeners, and also share my message with people all around the world. I didn't have a helmet on. However, I had a pair of goggles. My goggles there was a lot of padding on them. So they were the only thing that braced my fall. Falling from, gosh, it was a 20-foot jump. I went 5 or 10 feet above that, and then I cleared the landing. And so the only protection on my head had was a pair of goggles. I learned that not only did those goggles brace my impact, but as I continued to hit my head and continued to roll down the mountain, with each impact, they moved, and mysteriously or not so mysteriously, depending on what you believe, I believe everything happens for a reason, they cushioned to brace each impact. Also, I later learned that they wanted to bring a helicopter to the mountain to rush me to the hospital, and they couldn't because it was too windy, so they had to send in an ambulance. And out of all the paramedics in the county, there was only one who could intubate on the spot, and because of the severity of my accident, I needed that to be able to breathe. And lucky for me, he was one of the paramedics that showed up to the mountain that day. Then when I got to the hospital, I was in the intensive care unit. So there's always three things that I like to point to. The first thing is my goggles. The second is a paramedic, and the right one, showing up to the mountain that day. The third was I was resting in a coma in the intensive care unit at UMass Memorial Hospital in Worcester. So the doctors came into the room to share my prognosis with my parents, and the doctors were just doing their job. There wasn't anything malicious about it. They just started to share with my parents. My mom stopped them, and she said, no, not in front of him, because she realized that even though I was in a coma, I was still taking in information. Just based on the impact alone, he'll be out 7 to 10 days at a minimum. However, we have to partially induce him into a further coma because they were afraid that I would wake up and I would panic and I would worry about what happened, who are you people, what am I doing here, what happened, and get aggressive with people. And they didn't want to have that. So they had to induce me into a coma because the swelling was such in my brain that if I woke up and I panicked, it would have increased more and I would have died. So they had to put me into a partially induced coma, waiting for that to come down. Fast forward 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, I came out of the coma, and that's where my journey began. That's where I had to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again. But I want to share this story where I was in a wheelchair at the time, and I was just looking over my situation. I remember turning to my mom and saying, am I ever going to be able to walk again? And she didn't hesitate. She said, of course you are. That's what we're doing here, so you can get everything back and we can go home. So this allowed me to keep moving forward, keep getting up and moving forward every day. And it was right around this time that I unknowingly was utilizing a system to not only make a full recovery, but run out of the hospital, and that's the STEP system. So STEP is an acronym, and it stands for support. Support, you got to make sure that you have the support of your family and friends around you, and this is going to have you falling back on relationships that you built prior to your setback. T is trust. Trust that once you take your first step, your next step is always going to be available to you. Follow it. And this also, with trust, is following the calling that you have inside of yourself. So around this time in my recovery, early on in my recovery, Rodman, I overheard my parents talking with the doctors, and they were part of my support. And they met with them every week. And that is, they were saying, all right, so what do we need to do this week to make sure Nick makes a full recovery? And the voice I heard in the back of my head was, no, you're going to run out. And this was even before I could talk. So I was able to communicate this to the team, to my parents and the team. And then that became our common goal. So trusting that voice inside of you. Back to the acronym, E is energy. Energy, by maintaining your energy, allows your body's natural ability to be able to heal itself. And medications get in the way of this. This is important to mention because so many drugs were pumped into me just to help keep me alive. As soon as I could get off the medication, I had to allow my body's natural ability to be able to heal itself, and I've continued that all throughout my life. So P is persistence. Once you take your first step, keep getting up every day and taking your next step, no matter how small. And this system that I unknowingly followed allowed me to not only make a full recovery, but run out of the hospital. So if you fast forward a little bit, less than 60 days later, it was 86 days total from when I got in the accident to when I ran out of the hospital, I realized my goal of running out of the hospital.
There's a lot to unpack here. I mean, going through your story and listening, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is the odds of you sitting here on this interview with me right now seem like they're pretty miraculous that you actually are, that you're on the other side of this camera talking to me right now, because I mean, the fact that you had to have somebody very specialized happen to be on the mountain that day just to treat you, somebody who, out of all the odds of somebody that shouldn't have probably been there that day, or that by chance was there that day, just to incubate you, to be there to make sure that you were going to live on, is amazing. Your goggles story, just the fact that your goggles moved in just the right places to protect your head from further damage, all those things that had to happen are a miracle in themselves. And then you think about people in life every day, we take our health so for granted, right? A lot of the things that we do, the things that we are, the way that we behave, it's a miracle that most of us are here. But for you, it's just a testament to, I don't know if you want to call it fate. I don't know if you want to call it, you were meant to do bigger things in life. I don't know if you want to call it God. I don't know if you want to call it energy, but it's a miracle that you're here.
Oh, thank you. I think it's all of the above too. I think it's all of the above, and I really feel like now looking back on it, it led me to what I'm doing today. So, if you wasn't like I was like, all right, I'm all set. I can just be a kid now. It was a little bit of a road. I had to go to outpatient therapy for a while, and even after I was cleared for with physical, occupational, and speech therapy, I went to physical therapy on my own to get stronger on my left shoulder, and that was the shoulder that I fell on. So just to continue to work and continue to get better. And there's another layer of my story which actually led me to what I'm doing today, and it kind of connects with what it does connect with what we're talking about. So if you fast forward a little bit, I was able to graduate high school, and I got my real estate license. I grew up in a family real estate. My family was always in real estate, so I was always around it. My dad was a builder, then a realtor, then an investor, and toggled between the few all throughout my life. So it was all I ever knew. So after graduating high school, I got my real estate license. I was a realtor for really full time 6 years, and then after 6 years, my dad came to me and said, "Hey, can you help me with marketing all the properties that I'm getting?" He was getting as an investor, so buying them creatively, non-traditional, without using big down payments or big investor money or signing personally. That's how he was acquiring these properties, and he needed help with marketing them. Well, then over the course of 13 months, my income shifted where at first I was making the majority of my income as a realtor, and then I was making the majority with him as an investor, because the helping with the marketing, Rodman, turned into, all right, well, now I need someone to help with all the buyers that are calling off this marketing. So then I was able to join him full time after, in January of 2016, I was able to join him full time. And all throughout my life, I've always had this, since my accident, I've always had this voice back to the voice in the back of my head. I've always had this voice in the back of my head that's saying, yeah, okay, this is great. Like, no matter how successful, how much money, like all the material goals and everything, no matter what I'm achieving, always this voice saying, yeah, but what you really need to be doing is telling your story from stage, sharing it, and helping individuals that are going through trauma get through to the other side and thrive with the rest of their lives. And I've always done that since my accident, naturally. Like whenever someone is in an accident and they need help going through it, and getting through to the other side and moving on with the rest of their lives and thriving with the rest of their lives, people always say to me, "Oh, have you talked to Nick? You got to talk to Nick." And I've always just naturally shared the step system with them. However, I've always been like doing it not as a business. It's just always something I've done. then someone who saw me speak, and I did a little speaking on my own too. Like, I did the normal things. I went to Toastmasters and um, got stage time and got the experience and everything. However, in 2019, someone saw me speak at one of our conferences, and she came up to me and approached me and gave me her card and said, if you're ever looking to fine tune your message and bring it to another level so you're able to impact and affect the most amount of people possible, let me know and I can open the doors and introduce you to some people. And then I finally reached out to her in the spring, almost exactly 3 years ago. I reached out to her and I said, all right, I'm ready. She introduced me to her mentor, which has become my mentor, Trisha Brooke. And since then, there has been no voice in the back of my head. And what that's evidence to me is that I'm doing exactly what I was put on this earth to do.
Sometimes we can aimlessly drift through our life, not really sure how to break the patterns and live the life that you've always dreamed of. I get it. I have been there, so caught up in chasing opportunities until I found myself in a life that felt foreign to me. It took me years to unwind the messy web to get back to what I've been put on this planet to do. And let me tell you this, purpose doesn't have to feel out of arm's reach. And I've designed a plan for you to do a little bit each day over the next 30 days in a challenge that I call the Outlier 30. It's specifically designed to help you find or create more clarity around your purpose. So if you're feeling lost and you want to finally turn things around and live that life that you were destined to create, sign up right now. It's free. You have absolutely nothing to lose and the whole world to gain.
Visit gorodman.com/outlier30 today.
So you found your purpose, which is awesome. And then on top of that, I've always felt like people need to tell their stories. If you've got a story that can give somebody some positive impact, because so many people need to hear what we've overcome. They need to hear about how we've gotten better. They need to hear about how we can get through things. And so there you are with a perfect opportunity to really teach people about when you're in these positions, when you have these trials in your life, this is what you need to do and then you need to implement in order to move on. I'm curious though, what about the people who are sitting in those situations though, and they go the other way, like they're so down or so depressed or so don't understand how to get through it? What would you tell those folks they need to do to really start that journey to recover, to find themselves again?
Well, you said it in your question. I don't know if you realized it, but you said it in your question. Start. They need to begin. They need to start. And just one step at a time. Like for me, if you take it back to, I'll go even with both scenarios. So it was my accident. It was literally I would get up every day and just, what's next? What's next? I just kept getting up figuratively and literally because I couldn't walk at first, and I kept doing whatever they asked me to. Just kept moving forward. The biggest problem that we see is, and I'm sure you agree with this, is that there are so many people out there who freeze and don't know what to do, and then they get down on themselves, exactly like you were talking. Like, what do you say to those people? Start. Like if anything, I want to shake them and just like start. And the greatest thing is that once you start, your next step is always going to be available to you. But you got to start for that to happen, for that magic and that miracle to happen.
Well, Nick, where were you at mindset wise? I mean, I know when you were younger, you come out of the coma and you're sitting there, and it sounds like you were very lucky to have a great support system in your family. People there who really were lifting you up. But I mean, I would think coming out, especially being that youthful, that your mindset had to be one of the most critical components of your recovery. What was that like? Where was your mindset when you came out? And then how did your mindset mature over that period of time when you were in your recovery?
So that's a great question. My family didn't allow me. They were my support. They were my support system, didn't allow me to go down a negative path because at the time, My dad was actually he was after he sold one of his, I think his brokerage. I sold one of his companies, and he was doing some motivational speaking and consulting. So he was very into the mindset and that you had to be keeping a positive outlook about this when it happened. So I was very fortunate of that. Still to this day, I talk about that all the time. They were around my room. This was, if you picture, before I could even walk. He put affirmations on like all of my room, every wall in my room. So it once said, like, if I remember, with each step I take, I'm getting closer and closer to my goal. And then another, it was just versions of that same affirmation all throughout my room. So they were really important to me. And I think whenever you're at the beginning of any kind of life challenge, tragedy, setback, anything, you just have to ask yourself, what is the step that I can take today? Like, I realize I'm not, like, if I were to think, even at that point when I was 14, okay, well, after that happened, after I came out of the coma and I was able to get my wits and knew how my surroundings and everything, knew what was happening. All right, you're going to be in here for another 2 months. And then after that, you're going to have to get 6 months of outpatient therapy for physical, occupational, and speech therapy. If I would have known that at the time, I don't know if, like, it's not fun to think about all the work that you have coming up. However, I just took one step at a time, and I kept getting better every day. So I think that's the most important thing. It's just to keep moving forward and keep taking one step at a time, because everything builds upon itself.
And just to have your mother, when your mother said, yeah, you're going to walk. I mean, like, she probably didn't know at the time, but in her brain, she knew. Maybe medically they didn't know, but she knew you were going to walk again. And just having that positive piece of information, or that affirmation for you, had to be life altering, where you said, yeah, I am going to walk, because your mother said that, yes, you were going to walk.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is funny. I used to say that my parents stopped the doctors after I got in the accident and wouldn't let them come in the room and share the not so good news, because, well, let's be candid. It was more negative and more negative and more negative every time they, especially at the beginning, every time they looked at it and came to my parents with more information. So I used to say up until a few months ago that my parents stopped the doctors. And my dad, after I was on his show a few months ago, said to me, I don't want to take the credit. It wasn't me. It was your mom. Like, it was your mom that stopped the doctors. So, I'm very fortunate to have the family and the support that I have, for sure.
So what would you tell people? I mean, I know you've got your program, and that had to come. I assume that came to you after the fact. So you went through the whole process, and then kind of revisited what helped you be successful on that journey, and came up with your program. But that's going to be an instrumental thing for that person now who's sitting in that same situation. You were discovering it as you were going along, and that's the power of a great story, right? That's the power of being able to take what you went through and share that with somebody, because you are able to then take what you've learned through that process and go, hey, this is what helped me when I went through. And that's going to change so many people's trajectories and their lives and the way that they go through their healing processes. And I always tell people, if you have a story where you have overcome something in your life, you owe it to society to share that. Somebody needs to hear it. Somebody needs to know about it. And that sounds like it's exactly what you're doing with your program.
Absolutely. And it was actually my my mentor, Trisha, that pulled it out of me. And I was working one-on-one with her several years ago. As I said, I met her 3 years ago, almost exactly, and was introduced to her. And we were working together, and she said, all right, so you got in your accident, you were in a coma, and you ran out of the hospital. How did you do it? I don't know. I just got up every day and just did the best I could. And I don't know. I just did it. And she goes, no, not good enough. So she kept asking me seven layers deep, to a point where I was I was like angry. I was frustrated, not with her, just with figuring it out. And I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, stop asking me. Like, let up. Give me a break. And I'm so happy that she was able to do that with me, because what came from that is the step system and what I'm able to coach and work one-on-one and share in my keynote. I do, because I have the time. I go into stories, funny stories and things that happen, and also teach the step system within my keynote. So without her, the step system would have remained in my mind, I guess you could say. So very, very fortunate that I was guided on the path to work with her, for sure.
Yeah. Well, number one, I'm really appreciative that you've come on today to share this, because I know that, again, stories change lives, particularly the stories of overcoming our trials. And so I want people to be able to, number one, find what you might be able to offer them, so that if they're going through these struggles, or they know somebody who's going through these struggles, they can look at your system and really help themselves or help somebody who really needs it. So where do people need to go to find information about you and your programs?
Sure. So what we covered today, Rodman, is just a 10,000 foot view of the step system. And what they can do is, if they go to nickprefontaine.com/step, they can download the whole step system for free. And that's going to teach them all about support, trust, energy, and persistence. And I noticed, or I remember rather, that you said there are people that are kind of down on themselves, down the dumps, or frozen in fear, and they don't know what to do. Well, by downloading the step system, it'll help you, those people, or anyone, take your first step today.
Now that's great. I appreciate that, Nick. And I'll put that in the show notes too, so people know where to go get that download. Make it really easy for them. So if you're listening, go to the show notes. I'll have a link in there for you on that. One last question, Nick, and I always ask this to everybody who comes on the show, and I'm sure you've got some very, very valuable information here. But if you could go back in time and sit down with your younger self and give yourself the one piece of most valuable advice that you could give to yourself, what would that be?
That piece of advice would be to slow down. You're going to be successful. You're going to accomplish your goals. Slow down. Just slow down and make sure that you're doing everything properly and not skipping any steps, because what that's going to create, if you're doing it just for the reason that you want to go fast and do more, what that's going to cause is headaches down the road, where you're going to have to look back and have people come back to you. So just slow down, make sure you're doing everything properly.
Yeah, I love it. People are going so fast in life as it is right now, Nick. It's always a good idea to slow down and enjoy that ride. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.